And I know what it means to feel the dark, deep, hard, painful stuff physically and mentally, emotionally, and also that beautiful side of postpartum that truly does exist, that I feel like we are so unaccustomed to knowing, that we have forgotten. And mainly because society, especially in the US, has painted this picture of motherhood is crappy, motherhood is mediocre, you're going to feel like crap, your hormones are going to be a disaster, and this is just your new normal. So welcome to the team.
Yeah.
And that is so not true.
You're listening to the Mommy Labor Nurse podcast, where you'll gain the tools, knowledge, and confidence you need to erase the unknowns, feel in control, and have an even better birth, no matter how you deliver. My name is Liesl Teen, mom of 2, practicing labor and delivery nurse, and your host. From over 8 years and counting of working at the bedside, I know that knowledge is the key to an even better birth. So tune in each week to learn about all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum from me, a labor and delivery nurse that's seen it all. And now let's get into this week's episode. Happy Monday, you guys. This week on the podcast, if you can tell by the name of the episode, we are talking about the beauties. The beauties, I almost said the beautiful disaster. I guess it can be interpreted that way. The beautiful disaster of postpartum. No, but really, postpartum can be beautiful. I promise. And you're going to hear how Maranda tells us the story of her 4 home births and how it took until that 4th one for her to have a beautiful postpartum experience that does exist, contrary to popular belief. We only, a lot of the times we talk about how horrible things are in postpartum, and, for good reason, right? We're trying to prepare everybody for the storm that might arise. But it was very interesting having Maranda on this episode because she's seen the depths, and she talks about this in her episode. She's seen the disasters that postpartum can be, and she's experienced those depths of postpartum with her first 3. And then after her 4th home birth, she experienced the type of postpartum experience that she wants everybody to have. She also lives in Alaska on a 40-acre homestead. And she starts off the episode by telling me that, and I'm like immediately interested in your life. Oh my gosh. But this is a really, really profound, incredible story that you're about to hear. And I'm not going to spoil too much, so let's hear from Maranda. Hi, Maranda. Welcome to the Mommy Labor Nurse podcast. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
I am so excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. I'm so excited. Fellow podcaster. I love fellow podcasters on the podcast. And I've said this before when I have other fellow podcasters, but we have the voices, like we have podcasts we know the podcast map.
It makes for easy conversation.
There you go. Exactly. So I love it. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and where you're from, what you do, how many kids you got, what you ate for breakfast, anything you want to share?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So probably some of the most interesting, wild things about me is I am a homesteader in Alaska on 40 acres. So kind of in the middle of nowhere, but town is like 30 minutes away. So it's all good. I have 4 kids. My oldest is 14. And then I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and then my youngest turns 5 in a month. And that is so hard to admit.
Oh,
Like my baby's growing up. Yeah, I've been married for 10 years. My husband and I did the single mom thing with my first, met my husband. It's been a beautiful, beautiful marriage. A lot of people are like, how in the world are you married to a man like that? Because he's just phenomenal. Like we don't have any, like I have all the help, right? Like all the help. So he's 100% with it. And yeah, I got started in the work with postpartum because of my experiences entering into motherhood, starting with pregnancy. So I have a background in biology. That is where I come from. I have a love for all things science related. I was very into nutrition, biology processes, and all of the things. And so when I got pregnant, of course, like my brain was like all about all the things and
Yeah.
pregnancy related. And a little bit about birth too. Like I wanted to know all of the things related to birth. And I have 4 home births under my belt. I'm super blessed. And I'm happy to share those experiences if you want to hear more.
Yeah, definitely.
I didn't do a lot of research about postpartum. Like I was like, oh
Mm.
yeah, I know what the, best breast pump and the awesome car seat. And like I had all of that laid out, but not once did I do any research or anything on how to heal my own body after a baby.
I
It's
mean, it's crazy, but I feel like I can relate and almost everyone else out there can relate because it's just not understood that we need to do that yet. And we're working on it, but it's we need to do a better job of like being like, hey, there's this period after you give birth, and this is what it's about, and we're going to support you, and we can get there. We need to do better there too. But it's like this gatekeeping like Mean Girls vibes that I get from the postpartum period.
It's crazy, right? I had a friend recently go through like a major surgery on his leg, and
Yeah,
he was told, you have to heal. Like, you're not supposed to get up for 8 to 12 weeks. You're just, surgery is going to take a toll. You've got to eat well. You got to do all of these things. No work for you. And I was like, wait a second. Like, that's your leg, which is a big deal, right? But how
sure.
many women like spend their entire 9 months creating a freaking human being, birthing that baby into the world, and then nourishing that baby, oftentimes with their own body? And it's like, you got to go back to work in a week.
Yeah, no,
It's
no thanks.
insane. No,
It
it's
is insane.
terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
can do so
no.
much better.
We absolutely can. So I want to hear about your home births. I'm very, 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 very interested in that. And also how you took those home births and those experiences, and it sounds like your postpartum experiences, and did something about that because you are the founder of
Postpartum University.
Woo!
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to hear more about
Yeah.
that, but I want to hear about your home births too.
Okay, so I'll start with my home births because
Let's
they
do
are
it.
such a huge component of how I created and founded Postpartum University and the work that I do today. So it started really with my son, who's now 14 years old, and going through the process of labor and birth was very textbook for me.
Mm.
Like it was 17 hours, 2 hours of pushing, all of the things. Like, and even today, my son is very textbook. Like, it's
Oh,
so interesting, like how the birth stories relate to the personalities of my children. So I did all of the research. I was like so ready for it. And I will tell you now, knowing what I now know is that nothing ever really truly prepares you for that experience. You just have to kind of go with it and
yeah,
make sure that you have this supportive team. And I wanted that team so much. Like I knew the team of my birth experience was going to be so foundational for me because I know how I handle pain. I know
yeah,
how I operate when I need support, right? I have to have other people there supporting me along the way, and they have to know exactly what I want because I have that personality, right?
yeah,
So it was
yeah.
so important to me. And I'm going to tell you, I was not able to find that with an OB at all.
Hmm.
I I was in Chicago for several months and I was actually going to be birthing there. And then I
Oh,
couldn't find the provider that I wanted. I was like, I need to go back home. I need to be
hmm.
with my family. And so I came back up and I was looking for OBs and providers. And I got to 37 weeks pregnant, still with an OB. I had 5 different OBs at that point in time. And it was interesting things that were happening that were really big red flags for me. It was
Hmm.
I needed an ultrasound and I was getting undressed and a man who's the OB walked into the room and was like, "Here I am." And I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm still undressing." He was like, "I've seen it all before." And like
Uh,
just kept like coming, like it was
Yeah.
no, whatever. I don't care. It was like complete disregard for my body and my autonomy. And I was like, no, you're not it. And then it was like somebody else she was checking the fundal height and she was pushing on my stomach and she was hurting me. And I yelped like, ow, you're hurting me. And she couldn't even make eye contact with me. And she was like, yeah, sorry. And it was like, who are you people? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is going on in our worlds? And then I got to 37 weeks and I was happy with the provider that I had. And then he was like, you know what? You're a really small woman, and I am. I've been small all of my life. And he was like, and I just don't think that you're going to give birth at a decent time. You're probably going to go into labor really early. And so I'm going to check your cervix every few days.
What?
And I was like, oh, no, you're not. Like, no, you're not. And he was like, well, if you don't, then I don't know if you can be here.
What?
And I was like, see ya. I'm out of here. You're not putting your hands in my body every couple of days because you think that I might potentially go into early labor because I am a tiny person who's gained so much weight in my pregnancy. I have a healthy pregnancy. Like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
no.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I was going to say, you said your son is 14. So this was 2010.
Yeah, 2009. He was born in 2009. Yeah. Not that long ago. So anyway, I found a home birth midwife. I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm totally doing it. This is where I felt comfortable. Because honestly, I had
Yeah.
a really rough childhood. I had a lot of problems health-wise.
Oh,
I was constantly hospitalized. And
oh,
hospitals really just kind of scare me anyway. And I was like, there
yeah.
was so much relief that I felt having made the shift. And I remember my dad actually, he was like, I don't want you to drive. And I was like, whatever, dad, like, it's not that big of a deal. I can drive at 37 weeks pregnant. And he was like, let me take you and whatever. So he came to my appointment with me and he was like, I feel like I just walked out of therapy. Like, that was so
Oh,
good. And I was like, yeah, midwifery care was like so different. Anyway, I had this beautiful home birth that was incredibly difficult, right? I
yeah.
think oftentimes we think that home births are maybe, could be less traumatic or less difficult. And that was not the case for me. It was really, really difficult. And I had to come over so many emotional hurdles during that time, right? The way you birth your babies is kind of the way you do life. And when things get hard, I have a tendency to run. And that's exactly what I was trying to do. I was not wanting to face it. And my midwife kept bringing me right back. And I did it. I remember giving birth to him and picking him up out of my body and holding him. And I looked at every single person in that room and I was like, I did it. Did you see that? Like, I did it. Like, I was so overwhelmed with the fact that I actually did something so dang difficult, the hardest thing I've ever did.
Yeah. I can relate so hard because that's exactly what I did too. I was like, I feel like I am a superstar right now. Like, what just happened, y'all? What just happened?
Yeah. Yeah. It was like, did you
Yeah.
see that? And they're like, man, we've been sitting here for 17 hours, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah,
know.
yeah. It was a whole different ballgame. And then enters postpartum. And I remember like it was a whole different world. I had no idea. My first postpartum meal, y'all, was top ramen. Like I had no idea how to heal my body. And that's really when the nutrition and stuff started to really get into me and really take hold. Perinatal mental health and all of those things kind of started coming together because I entered into a strong postpartum depression and anxiety. I tell this story all the time about monkeys coming down from the ceiling to steal my baby. And the only difference between my panic attacks over those thoughts and psychosis was the fact that I recognized them as not okay. I knew that that was not okay, but I had no control. I didn't understand what was happening to my body. It felt like it wasn't even my body.
Wow.
It took me years to recover. I refused to tell anybody that I was experiencing depression. I look back now and I'm like, how did y'all not know? How in the world did y'all not know? I
Yeah.
became a single mother. I couldn't life. I was able to take care of my son. I don't even know how I did that. I look back at pictures and I was like, I don't even remember what happened here.
Yeah.
And it was from that experience of coming out of that darkness where I was like, this is not okay. we have to do something better because I know that I did all the things, right? Like, right? Right. I did all the things. Like, why did this happen to me? And the fact that even though I was so alone in what I was experiencing, and I felt like I was the only one on earth going through it, statistically speaking, my biology mind coming on here was like, you are definitely not the only one. There's so many more other people. I would take my son to the park and it was like, okay, there's 30 women here. And I'm like doing the math in my head. Like that means that there's at least five, to 10 other people who are experiencing the same thing as I am, right? It's cool. It's
Yeah.
cool. We're here. Like that was the defining point that really started to shape Postpartum University because I was
Mm.
determined that I was going to do something different and I was going to support others and learning what it really means to heal our bodies because nobody's telling us about these things.
No, no, absolutely not. I want to go back really quick before we move on and hear all that quote again you said about your births and how yours, what you said yours was run, like how we do life is how we do birth. I think that's so powerful. Oh my gosh. And now I'm like thinking about both of my births and I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll tell you a little bit more about my other births. I had my second birth was also a home birth, and I was in a new relationship with an incredible support person, and I was just like I was going to do things so differently. Like I had it all laid out. I knew exactly what I was going to do. Right. Very like poignant. Everything's planned. And I remember going into labor, and my husband he's like so old school. He hated cell phones. Like the only reason why he has a cell phone now is because his work requires it.
Oh,
But he was taking an exam at school when I went into labor. And
oh,
so I didn't have any way to get a hold of him. And I was like, it's no biggie. Like, he's going to come back anyway. It's
yeah.
going to take me hours to
Uh-oh.
anyway. Like, it was 17 plus hours for my first.
Oh no.
And the contractions were insane. Like, they were coming. Sometimes they were like 10 seconds apart. Sometimes they were 2 minutes apart. They were just really, really like inconsistent and constant and really intense.
Yeah.
And so I called my mom and I was like, hey, I'm in labor. I need you to come right now. Because I also have my son. You need to be here for Julian. And I hung up the phone and went into another contraction. Anyway, they missed the birth. My husband made it by 30 minutes. And
Oh,
he was like, did you call the midwife? And I was like, no, I didn't call the midwife. And I'm angry because he's legit calling the midwife. And I'm thinking, she's going to sit here and wait for hours for my birth. No, I gave birth in 90 minutes. It was an hour and a half labor. My daughter came out of me so fast, like a bullet. And she was right around 39 weeks. So she was a little week, about a week early. Or, I mean, on time, but like whatever. It was so quick. And I was like, yeah, I did that. Midwife missed the birth.
yeah.
I, it was just me and my husband. It
Wow.
was as my parents were walking in the room, walking into the house, and they were like, hey, you guys. And then my daughter, Gabby, starts crying. Wah! And they're like, oh my gosh,
What?
wait a
Yeah.
second. We just missed everything.
What did we just walk into?
They were like, we took our time because you took forever the last one. So
Yeah.
like totally makes sense. And it was such an empowering experience to know that I did that again. But I was like, okay, now healing's going to be so much easier for me. And I overestimated
Mm,
what I could do
mm,
because I felt so good. And
mm.
I feel like oftentimes, even in life now, like when things are going really well, I'm like, yeah, I can veg out on those yummy treats, or yeah, I can spend extra hours staying up at night, or
Yeah.
like those extra things. Cause I'm like, oh, I feel great. Yeah, I'll take on that extra project. And then it's like, whoa, it just hits you weeks after. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened to me. I was flying high as a kite for 6+ months postpartum and I was over exerting myself. And then the crash came.
Oh
I ended up being diagnosed with ulcerative colitis at
Oh,
about 11 months postpartum.
wow.
And that was incredibly detrimental. And that ended up in a new spiral of support that is now part of Postpartum University, because no one is teaching us that over 28% of women in the first year after giving birth is going to experience an autoimmune disease diagnosis.
Wow.
Is that not insane?
That's wild.
We know depression rates are at 1 to 3, right? We know anxiety rates are just as high, but no one's talking about autoimmune disease being like 1 out of 3. It's insane.
No,
It's insane.
I'm not familiar with that. So I'm interested to hear more because what? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that led to a whole new area of research and support. And this is really, I was a childbirth educator. I was writing books. I was started teaching and speaking at universities across the US. And so at this point in time, I kind of felt like I really had gathered up all of this information already. I was already teaching. And so this new idea of autoimmune disease put a different layer and a different perspective into everything that I had taught. And so now the understanding is how much inflammation is in our body and how much inflammation is related to, and dare I say, the cause of depression, anxiety, and autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
And when we look at the reasons behind that, we know, like, okay, our bodies change in postpartum significantly. After having given birth, it's already in a state of acute inflammation.
Yeah.
Right. And then what we have here is a recipe for my body's not getting the support it needs physically, mentally, emotionally. You're not getting the nutrients you need. 80% of women who enter in postpartum are depleted of nutrients.
Yeah.
And we can go on and on and on. They're not getting enough sleep, right? Their nervous system is operating on high. Birth trauma is 30 to 45%, right? And so they're entering into motherhood with trauma. Not even talking about like how our childhood trauma enters in the scene in postpartum, right? Like that's a whole difference. So our nervous systems are shot. We're not getting any sleep. We're not getting any support. We're nutrient deprived. And of course, our inflammation is going to skyrocket. We now have evidence to show that scientifically that inflammation in the body is a precursor to depression and anxiety and autoimmune disease. We can actually predict when you're going to have depression, anxiety, and autoimmune issues based on your levels of stress in your body and inflammation in your body.
Wow.
That's profound.
Yeah, that is profound. That's crazy. And it makes sense. I'm not like mind blown. I mean, I'm mind blown that like we have the research, but like it makes sense.
It's so crazy to me that we have this information. We have this data and we don't ever apply it to childbirth.
Yeah.
Like it's not new.
Yeah. Yeah. No, not at all. Well, you've had 2 more births. We're in the
okay. Yeah.
Second one. Okay. So are we still? Is there more that came out after birth 3 and birth 4? Or
oh my gosh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So.
Not sure what you need to care for yourself down there after birth. I've been there. Not stocking up on postpartum essentials before I gave birth to my first was one of my biggest mistakes. I don't know what I was thinking, guys. But now as a 2-time mama, I know a thing or two about postpartum recovery and exactly what you need to make it through this stage as comfortably as possible. For a completely free checklist of what you need to stock up on for those early postpartum days, just head over to mommylabornurse.com/postpartum checklist. That's mommylabornurse.com/postpartum checklist, all one word, to grab the PDF for free today.
Birth 3 came around and I'm in a huge transition in my life, y'all. Huge transition. My husband and I bought our land. We're building our home. We moved into like I was living in Anchorage at the time. That's where we had met, and I had my others. And now we're in at Palmer, which is like a really small town. I'm actually not even in the town. It's like out of the town. And so I've moved. We lived in a fifth wheel so that I could get my like work on our home and have enough time because we were doing so much of it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I ended up having to move into like a rental home. So there's like a lot of movement because I was like, I'm going to have birth again and a home birth again. And it cannot be in a fifth wheel in the wintertime with the risk of not having water because of frozen pipes because we were constantly dealing
Oh,
and not having a tub, right? Because
yeah.
Alaska life is serious, y'all. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's like, so there was lots of transitions in my life. And I gave birth to my daughter in 2.5 hours. The midwife actually came, but I will tell you that it was probably one of my harder labors because I was so ready to just be done
Mm.
and so emotionally tied up in other things. Like I just wanted her to fall out, and I was upset that she wouldn't just fall out of my body, right? Which is
Mm.
high expectations that we understand to not be true. Like I knew that the chances of her just falling out of my body when I stood up was not going to be likely, right?
Yeah.
I was going to have to work for it. But also, I needed so much support and handholding. And my midwife and my husband were right there helping me. And and it was interesting because everything that I knew about birth in my head, I was standing up, I was doing all the squats, I was feeling like my body was going to rip open in half. And I hadn't had that experience before.
Oh,
And my midwife was like, I want you to come lay down. And I was like, lay down. Like,
yeah.
you don't know. This is we're not in a hospital. And she was like, listen to me. Like, I just want you to lay down for a second. And I laid down. And what it was is, and I felt it, my cervix was so far behind that it was putting pressure on the wrong
Oh,
part of my uterus.
oh, yeah.
And by resting, and she was like, I want you to have the next couple of contractions in your bed. I want you to sink into your bed. She was like so intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I did. And my cervix aligned. And she was like, yeah, if you want to get up, you can get up. And I was like, no, I'm giving birth right here. This feels great. And it
Mm.
was like this whole um, rest and relax into it, which was a whole different thing for me. And
Mm-hmm.
to receive support, to allow others to just like tune in to what I need and like help me in that process.
Mm-hmm.
I needed that so, so much. So I gave birth to her 2.5 hours, and it was a beautiful experience. My other kids come in, and we have all of the things. Months, I think 3 months go in, and I'm diagnosed with bipolar, postpartum bipolar.
Oh, that's a left turn.
That was a left turn. That I was like, and here's the thing. I think hindsight, I was like, I have all the things.
Yeah.
I have been doing this work for a while. I didn't push my body this time like I did the second time around. And I actually know all the things, unlike the first time around, right? This is my
Yeah.
third go-to. Like
Yeah.
I totally have this. And so I had this in my head of like, I already know all the answers.
Yeah.
And what I didn't do is apply them.
Ah.
I have all the
Mm.
answers. I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, I'm eating okay. And yeah, I'm doing this, but we're also in a huge state of transition. And I didn't give my body the rest that it truly deserved during that time because, yeah, it's fine. I know all the things and I'll listen in and I'll tune in when I'm supposed to. And I'll just pick it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. And I went in for a checkup. It was for my ulcerative colitis, which I had been working on, actively healing. I wasn't on any medications because I was doing such a good job with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then postpartum, I started noticing some things occur, and I was like, I need to go
Mm-hmm.
in. And my providers are so amazing because they were like, Miranda, how are you doing? Like, how are you really doing? No, I want you to tell me what is going on given your history. And I was like, yeah, there's this thing that I'm really struggling with. I find myself crying in the closet for days. Like, it's so hard for me to get out
Yeah.
of that space. And it's really dark. Like, I wonder why I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And feeling as if maybe my kids don't deserve me.
Oh,
And I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, how did I end up in this place? This is not what I wanted life to be.
yeah.
And
Oh,
then waking up on the next day and being like, "Whoa, I'm ready to go. Let's do our Costco shopping. Who wants to
mhm.
go on a hike? Make all my phone calls," right? And so people didn't assume or know anything.
Wow.
And so when I was sitting in the doctor's office and she was like, "You have postpartum bipolar." And I was like, I cannot believe that this is my reality right now. And I am so sick and tired of this, right? It's like depression, anxiety, autoimmune disease. Now, here you go. Here's your postpartum bipolar. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Right? Are you kidding me? And so I went home and I didn't even tell my husband. I was embarrassed,
Yeah.
but I did sit down with him and be like, okay, here's what I need. I need this so much. I need you to not be at the property for at least 2 weeks. I need sleep.
Mm,
That is what I have to prioritize. I'm so sleep deprived that I'm legit going crazy. That's just what I told him.
mhm,
I have to use my highs to prepare for my lows.
mm,
So I need all my shopping done. I need my food and my meals prepped. Like I ended up working on meditation and yoga during that time, and that's when I was like, I need you to hold me accountable. I these are the things that I need. A, B, C, D. These are the things that are going to help. And he's like, oh, okay, sure.
yeah.
And within, I would say about a month or two, I no longer had any episodes
Wow.
whatsoever because
Wow.
I was prioritizing the root cause of so many of these issues, right? I was making sure I was getting enough sleep. I was replenishing my body. I was restoring the balance in my nervous system. And I was asking for support so that I wasn't the one who was having to do it alone, so that I can eat, I can work on my nervous system, I can get the sleep that I deserve without sacrificing breastfeeding, my
Yeah.
body, my baby, everything else, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not in any way, shape, form, or fashion saying that's the way to go for everybody. I'm not saying that you
Sure.
shouldn't be on medications or anything like that. I'm saying this was my experience and my journey. And yeah, it greatly shifted the way I looked at perinatal mental health.
Mm,
And that spawned a whole new area for me where I really delved in and really honed in, and also the root cause of disease. It's actually how I developed the Mama Thrive method, where looking at what are the root causes of so many of our health issues, and
mhm.
which I've already mentioned so many of them, and how do we truly heal our body during the postpartum period. And that was where I was very inspired to write Reclaiming Postpartum Wellness. And that didn't happen though until my fourth baby came.
Okay.
Okay, so fourth baby comes, and I am in my dream home. I'm like, life is good. Not expecting number four, so that was
Oh,
definitely a thing. Like, we were planning on only having two, and then we have my son, so we had three kids total.
yeah.
But then here comes fourth, and I was like, okay, we can do this. Um, Although not really happy in the very beginning. I think that's really important
Mm,
to note
yeah.
because so many people go through that. And I think it does play a huge role in how we experience motherhood.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a huge part of my journey of accepting and being okay, and then moving forward to bond and nurture my baby, who I couldn't imagine life without now. Like,
Sure.
um, it's just, of course she's supposed to be here. So we have her, and the birth was 55 minutes. My midwife missed it. Yeah. It
Wow.
was just my husband and I. This time, like I had called her before I had contractions. Like I had a contraction here or there, but it was a defining moment in the way I had, it was like I all of a sudden got really teary-eyed and very emotional. Like I knew I was
Mm.
giving birth. It was a, okay, this is super cool. I forgot this part. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It was a full moon.
Oh,
And I woke up in the middle of the night to a black cat looking inside my window. I do not own a cat, let alone a black cat. And he's legit looking at me through my bedroom window. And it was like, I'm giving birth today.
whoa. Do you think it was like him just being like, hey, message?
Yeah. Yeah. It was totally a thing. I was like, okay,
Wow.
thank you very much. And it was so picturesque, right? And I wish I
Whoa.
would have captured that moment, but I didn't have my cell phone by my bed, but whatever.
Sure.
So anyway, fast forward, the day goes on, and I'm just like, I'm feeling really tired, and I'm just feeling like I want to be alone a lot.
Mm.
And so I retreat in my room. I let my husband know, like, I think today is going to be the day and just kind of need some space. And we'll see what happens. And he was like, got it. No problem.
Yeah.
And so I took a nap and I rested and I ate and, went outside. I have a beautiful deck out in my bedroom and listened to the birds sing. It was spring. And then I just got really emotional about everything. Like tears started coming. My husband had walked in the room and I just like started bawling my eyes out. And he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. Like I just,
Oh,
something is happening. And he's like, I think we should call the midwife. And I was like, I agree. And she still didn't make it in time, right? I think the contraction started right after. It was like such a good call. I think this is the day.
yeah.
She's like, are you having contractions? And I was like, no, I'm not, but I'm getting really emotional. And she was like, I'm going to take that as a sign I'll be there. Cause she knows my history,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
She knows how
Good
quickly I can give
midwife.
birth.
Good midwife. Yeah.
I'm coming. I'm checking this out.
Yeah.
And yeah, she missed it. And it
Wow.
was such a gorgeous birth experience. It was it was so easy for me to heal from that though, because now I had gone
Mm.
through all of these other experiences. And yes, experiences like they really do help, right? Like now you know what you didn't know before.
Yeah.
But it was such a different layer for each of those pieces for me because it
Wow.
was now I know the things. I know that I need to apply the things. And I know that there's a likelihood that I'm going to learn something new from this. And I'm going to just remain open and make sure I have all of my support systems in place.
Yes. Yes.
And it was a whole different postpartum experience. I was on cloud nine for months, months.
Wow.
It was such a good thing. And so I feel like I have experienced like this huge array. Like you put me in, like I could say, yeah, I experienced it over here and all the
Yeah.
way over here. Like that range is significant. And I know what it means to feel the dark, deep, hard, painful stuff physically and mentally, emotionally, and also that beautiful side of postpartum that truly does exist that I feel like we are so unaccustomed to knowing that we have forgotten. And mainly because society, especially in the US, has painted this picture of motherhood is crappy, motherhood is mediocre, you're going to feel like crap, your hormones are going to be a disaster, and this is just your new normal. So, welcome to the team.
Yeah.
And that is so not true.
All right, the sound of that heartbeat means it's time for this week's segment of Birth It Up Babies. This one is short and sweet, but still good. She says, hi, I just wanted to share my second Birth It Up baby. Oh, she's a two-timer. I love two-timers. I love getting messages from you guys. It's like, okay, so side, I will read this Birth It Up baby, I promise. But I love, 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 and I've had it happen a couple times, not very often, but it happens from time to time, where you go into the hospital and the patient that you get, you had them previously in their like like a previous birth. It's so cool. And they're like, oh my God, this is so cool. And you're like, oh my God, this is so cool. And so I'm getting the same feelings from seeing, messages come from you guys who take the birth classes. We have your first one. And then you're like, hey, I took it again. And it was great. And I had this great birth experience. So long story short, keep the messages coming, especially if you're a 2-timer or a 3-timer, however many times you've given birth and you've taken a mommy liver nurse birth class. Okay, anyways, this was supposed to be a short and sweet one, so sorry. I will still read it. It says, just wanted to share my second birth it up baby. I took the epidural course about 2 years ago for my first, and I almost had to go natural by accident. Your course empowered me to go as far as I could this time without the epidural, but I ended up getting it anyways. I still remembered everything from your class and felt so prepared. And she sent a little picture of her little baby girl. Looks like, yeah, she had a little baby girl because she has a little bow on her head. Oh, I love it. If you want to have an even better birth, just like this mama, head on over to mommylivernurse.com/courses to learn more about our 3 online on-demand birth classes.
It doesn't have to be true. That's what you're saying. It's like
It doesn't.
It does not have to be like that. I know. You're so I'm just here like soaking everything you have to say up because I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so right. And I'm like thinking about my own birth experiences and my own postpartum experiences. And if there's another one that will I'm like, oh, it's gonna be different. It can be different. So I'm okay. Tell me about Postpartum University now and how all of this knowledge that you have inspired your work because I'm so interested.
Well, first, when I first started it, my goal was to help all the moms. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, you need to know the knowledge that we're
Yeah.
not given. Providers are not taught this, right?
No.
How do we heal our bodies? What are the root causes? What do we truly deeply need?
Yeah.
And I feel like so many people aren't talking about that, especially nutrition, right? I have a certification program within Postpartum University. I have lots of courses and education pieces. And a lot of those things are taken by providers who were never given this information. So I actually started working with moms first. I'll back up and giving this information, and it was life-changing. And I no longer do one-on-one coaching and things and group coaching and stuff like that, but I did that for years. And what I noticed is that yes, they felt so amazing, but their providers were coming to me. I would have counselors and therapists and doctors literally emailing me or calling me saying, hey, you're working with my client and I understand that you're doing this and this. And their whole, I've been working with them for years, or I've been working on them, and none of this has changed, right? People were getting off thyroid medication. People were not getting off their SSRIs. Like, what are you doing? And of course, I wasn't I'm talk to your doctor and your provider.
Sure.
I'm just giving you the tools, right? Just giving you the tools. Obviously, the tools worked. And the providers were legit saying, I would have messages multiple times a week in my inbox. Could you tell me what you're doing?
Wow.
And that's really when I started shifting my work. You know what? Yes, I'm here and I have things to support moms, but I also have so much information that could support professionals because guess what? We're not taught this. You look at perinatal mental health, right? If you're a counselor or a therapist or a psychotherapist or whatever in the field, you are not taught about anything in the perinatal. You have to graduate from your school and you have to go to a secondary learning facility to get, that you pay for yourself to get that education. And the same is true with postpartum. No one is telling you how to heal. And your doctors, your providers, they don't know anything about nutrition. They certainly don't know about the physiological changes that are occurring in postpartum that require a whole different way of eating.
Right.
You don't know that. So many people don't know that.
Yeah.
So,
no, absolutely.
Postpartum University is really about giving moms back the power to take care of themselves, helping providers who truly want to know, what is it that I can do? How can I help better support, my patients, my clients, whatever. And so supporting everybody in this field of really getting to the root causes and helping based on, I think here's another key too. The postpartum body changes so much physiologically and psychologically, and we never address those
Mm.
at all. And oftentimes we lump postpartum in with pregnancy as if they're the same thing.
Yeah, I know. And they're not at all.
So different, right? Our needs are so different. Weirdly, it's not the same.
No.
And so that's what we do at Postpartum University. Yeah.
That is just it you know what it gives me? It's very if you're familiar, I'm sure you are familiar with functional medicine. It's very functional medicine-esque. That's what it sounds like to me. And I'm already personally exploring functional medicine and how it can benefit me and my family. So I'm on the Postpartum University train. So
Thank you. Yeah. Actually, our certification for postpartum nutrition is based in functional nutrition.
Yeah.
Which
not surprising.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's it. This is incredible. I want to talk a little bit about specifically postpartum related stuff too, because I know a lot of people think that you can prevent some of this stuff. And I want to hear your thoughts on whether some of this stuff is preventative. And if it is preventative, why it's preventative, and kind of more there.
Yes. And this is like a whole new episode that we can get into.
I know.
I could talk forever on this. Oftentimes, especially when we talk to a lot of providers, they will tell you the opposite is true, that it is not preventable.
Yeah.
Postpartum depression and anxiety is not preventable. And I am here to bust that myth.
Yeah. I thought that's what you were going to say, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. That is so far from the truth. Yes. Our economic status. Yes.
Yeah.
There's so many components that play into that. But there are so many things that we have control over that can support us in this period. And oftentimes it's this idea of, well, it's just our hormones and they're so messed up anyway, because they're in this big, humongous fluctuation. And I'm going to tell you that there is a biologically normal shift in your hormones. But when those hormones are not supported, that's when you have an imbalance.
Yeah.
That's when it doesn't feel good. The hormonal shift that takes place, if that was supported, it would feel fine. You would not be in a roller coaster. You would not be a hot mess. You would not be screaming at your kids one minute and crying the next.
Yeah.
Right? That would not be a thing. So when you look at what are the root causes of postpartum, I've talked about this a few times, depression and anxiety. One, it's not getting enough support. We feel like we're doing everything alone, right? When we have support in our communities, when we have support in our homes, when we have somebody else helping with the dishes and the laundry and the mountains of things that we have on our to-do list, but also when we have support with our body, when we're getting the massage that we so desperately need, right? Yeah. When we have somebody to help us take a shower. If you're not getting some alone time or quiet time simply because you have a new baby, you're not getting enough support.
Yeah. Preach. Like that is truer than true. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. A shower is not a privilege. That is like a human basic need. And you deserve that without feeling guilty because you have somebody there to help care for your babe.
Yeah.
And care for you. You deserve that too. Have somebody else come in and draw a bath of water, whatever it is that you need. Yes. So support, and support can look different in all forms. And I hear often, well, I can't afford support. You don't need to afford support. I was that girl who was legit counting pennies as a single mom in the checkout line.
Yeah.
Like, get creative. There's so many other moms in your space who are in the exact same position as you. Team together.
Yeah.
Pick a night. Tonight is my night, right? I'll take your kids for you, or I'll come over. I'll help you fold the stacks of laundry. And then, in a couple nights, you come over and do the same for me. Like, get creative.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's support. And then we have nutrition. eat well. And oftentimes we're told salads, smoothies, like those are the things that are going to help you lose the baby weight. And no, you're not going to get your body back in that way. And actually, those are really difficult for the body to digest in postpartum. And we can see it, we can feel it. Gas, bloating, like those heavy foods. We call those normal in postpartum oftentimes. It's just normal, right? You just had a baby, your hormones are changing. So, of course, you're going to be gassy, bloated, afraid to poop, constipated, all of those things. No, ma'am, those are not okay. Not okay. Our digestion changes significantly. And it's so funny how every culture in the world just about will recognize this and how they have different ways of eating in postpartum. They don't do the smoothies and the salads and things like that. They're not, focused on losing weight and getting your body back. Rather, they're like, how do we get all of the nutrients in you? Bone broth, soups, stews, porridges, hot teas, right? All of these things are so nutrient dense and very easy to digest. That's a problem with smoothies and salads and heavy casseroles. They're not easy to digest. They might be nutrient dense, but it doesn't mean anything if your body can't do anything with it.
Yeah. My mind is blown, honestly, like hearing you talk about all this stuff, because I feel like, I've been working at, it's like I'm recognizing more of like what the actual problems are, instead of trying to get at the problems that I think they are, which still, okay, great. But you really make a difference once you're like, oh, wait a second, we should be telling people this stuff instead of like trying to fix. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but I can't off the top of my head. But it's like, instead of trying to like Band-Aid this problem, like let's actually heal the wound this way, right?
Yeah, I think so often we think that more is going to help us heal when it's really less.
Yeah.
Like get rid of all the other stuff, get rid of the excess and just focus on these 5 key points, which sleep and nervous system and our rhythms within our body, which is a whole science. Chronobiology is fascinating, right? Where we are following the rhythms of our body. We don't operate in a go, go, go space, especially in postpartum. So, I mean, I can go on to talk about all of the different roots. I talk about it's in my book, Reclaiming Postpartum Wellness. So if anybody's interested in that, and that's basically what Postpartum University is. We get into all of those details.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. I think I want to have you on another episode. We can talk more about this stuff because like I said, I'm so interested in more of the root causes and just more of what we can do. I'm like, I want to be one of those providers on your calls because I want to know what I can do to help people. Because oh my gosh, I'm like, oh, okay. I do a lot in the birth world, right? But like, yeah, man, this is what we need to be focusing on. So we're gonna do another podcast episode, okay?
I would love that. And I would love to have you because that's where it starts. It starts with pregnancy and it starts with birth, right? And that's where we really want to like lay down that foundation of like, hey, there is more and let's get you healing. We don't want to turn around and be like, working to put out all the fires and, trying to heal the depression and anxiety and autoimmune issues. We just want you to feel good in your body right away. So you don't have to deal with those things.
Bingo. Oh, I love it. Well, Maranda, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of this. I'm excited to have you on for part 2, whenever that may be. But can you remind our listeners, or can you tell our listeners where they can find you on social media, your website, and your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to my website, postpartumu.com. Obviously, you're a huge fan of podcasts. I have a podcast, Postpartum University. You can find that on my website, as well as my book and all of the things. So yes, take a look, come listen in. I'd love to support you any way I can.
Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Already feeling a little more confident about pregnancy, birth, and newborn life? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can continue to erase the unknowns and never miss an episode. And if you're looking for even more, Instagram is definitely where I hang out the most. Come join our community of more than 500,000 moms for birth education, tips, and solidarity. You can find me at mommy.labornurse. Check out today's show notes and a searchable library of every Mommy Labor Nurse podcast episode at mommylabornurse.com/podcast. And while you're there, be sure to head to the blog to learn about our online birth classes too. See you next week, and remember, you can have an even better birth no matter how you deliver.